Pocono. The sun was shining, the track was dry, and 43 NASCAR Sprint Cup Series teams were set to go racing. Tony Stewart was starting from the back. Would it be deja vu all over again?
We always like to stir everybody up. We like to go out and do things that people say can't be done.
Tony still free and clear of lap traffic, all by himself on the racetrack.
Saving fuel every way he possibly can, coasting the car to turn one, and then refiring the engine.
Tony Stewart out of the final turn.
Here he comes for the first time as an owner driver.
Tony Stewart's going to take that team to victory lane.
It's just fun to watch a young group like this come together and have success like this. That's what makes it fun.
NASCAR Now is presented by the Home Depot.
Oh, it's my favorite kind of television, live and on the tightrope. Welcome to the combination Monday Roundtable and post-race edition of NASCAR Now from the Home Depot Garage Studio. Let's see, this was supposed to be the Pit Reporters Roundtable. They were a little bit busy in Pocono on Monday. So my Pit Studio and Tech Garage gang volunteered to jump in and help us out with our post-race wrap-up of 500 miles on the Tricky Triangle. Tim Brewer, Brad Daugherty, Rusty Wallace, thank you all for pinch hitting in. First, a thought on the 500-miler we saw on Monday.
Oh, I thought it was a really great race. I really did. The first part of the race was pretty slow, a slow start. Then all of a sudden, man, that baby really heated up and it got good. I mean, I told Alan and the guys a little while ago, I thought it was a pretty physical race. I saw a lot of body damage out there, saw a lot of passing late. I liked it.
I'll tell you what, Jimmy Johnson and Chad Knaus, they got to come back and feel like they won the race. You know, anytime you're 3 laps down and come back and get a decent finish, hey, that's a win for those guys.
We've been waiting on Denny Hamlin to get to victory lane. He's been so close all year long. Those last 50 laps of this race were so exciting. A lot of fun.
Yeah, I use the phrase a lot sometimes, talk about these races, but twists of plot. This one had a lot of twists of plot. I mean, Denny led the most laps, but it wasn't that easy. So after the rain postponement on Sunday and the track weepers and all that stuff, beautiful day in the Pennsylvania mountains on Monday, and the drivers and teams lined up to go just after noon Eastern time. Of course, Tony Stewart, after the practice crash Saturday, dropping to the back of the field. Would he get to the front again? Well, not quite all the way. So Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson lead the field of the green flag, with Johnson picking up where he left off at Indy and grabbing the lead into turn one. Jimmy led the first 22 laps of the race. Meanwhile, for Stewart, he had some early troubles halfway through that first run.
Yeah, he dropped back. He thought he had a tire going flat, so it really put him back in the pack, and he wasn't able to advance early like we thought he was going to.
Comes to pit road under green, loses a lap in the process for the tire. Didn't have a flat, just the handling on his car going away. Then under caution, the competition caution at lap 21. All the leaders come down pit road, and Denny Hamlin gets the lead for the first time on the day.
Well, you got to give NASCAR credit because, you know, they didn't have a lot of rubber on the racetrack. They wanted to give the guys an opportunity to adjust on their cars, so that was a good move by NASCAR.
Check out that race to the scoring line. Hamlin coming from third to first on the pit stop. He gets to the point. Meanwhile, Tony Stewart, while Hamlin set sail with a big lead, continues to have some troubles. He starts dropping back one more time.
He just never had that car handling good all day long. I mean, he ended up getting a 10th place finish out of this thing, but the car was just not hooked up like he thought he had it. Just kept fighting and handling.
On that pit stop, even unhooked the rear sway bar on the car. Speaking of troubles, Jimmy Johnson starts dropping back. He's losing power, and they start going to work trying to diagnose it. They changed about everything but the engine, didn't they, Tim?
Well, you can change everything but the engine, but you still yet. Chad Knaus and those guys, they changed the carburetor, they went over the spark plugs, the wires, they done everything they possibly did, but hey, one thing about it, they found what was wrong with it because he was really running at the end.
So Jimmy goes 3 laps down. Meanwhile, Denny Hamlin and Casey Kane quickly developing a rivalry for the lead. Meantime, David Reagan scrapes the outside wall. Caution comes out for debris. Johnson's team takes advantage of the trouble. Further repairs on the 48 car. They changed the carburetor on that pit stop, and again, Jimmy would come back for a great finish. A little testiness in this one.
Yeah, this got a little bit of a heated battle going between Robbie Gordon and David Strimmy. We see him spin out, and Strimmy has nowhere to go. As we found out later, though, Strimmy wasn't the cause of that wreck.
NASCAR can park here, whatever, but he's getting wrecked. 2 times. He wrecked me in 1, and he wrecked me in 3.
So Robbie said he's going to get wrecked. Well, they came back to tangle again a little while later. Here they go off the second corner. Clunk, clunk. Robbie says, hey, David, I wasn't very happy with that. I just want you to know that I'm not very happy. And David says, I'm really not happy with you. And a moment later,
Morton gets turned around for the second time. Crew had to make some repairs in this race car, and NASCAR wasn't too happy with either one of these guys.
Penalized them both 5 laps for that one. So 35 to go. Juan Pablo Montoya pitted in the first stall off of turn 3. His crew chief Brian Patty sees some debris hit the track. They call Montoya in, gets there before pit road closes. Then when the caution comes out for the debris and everybody else pits, what happens? Montoya and Sam Hornish, whose teams made a similar move, they wind up leading.
They're looking good at that point. I mean, that was a great move. I mean, that particular pit stall really helped in that instance.
Big moment here for Chase potential driver David Ruderman.
Yeah, he's just driving along there. Denny Hamlin comes in, really hauling the mail, gets into him, spins David. He also takes out his teammate Marcus Ambrose.
So on a restart, huge wreck here for Bobby Labonte. Watch this. Oh, hard hit in turn 1. 4 other cars collected. Fortunately, Bobby climbs out and he's okay, but a big hit there. So, final restart. Watch Denny Hamlin. He restarts 6th. He comes out of turn 1 2nd.
And that was the move of the race right there. Boy, when those guys got loose, the C's parted, and Denny stood on a throttle, drove it right through there, up into 2nd place. And then look at this battle for the lead right now. Bonzine down the back straightaway. Denny clears Clint Boyer and sets sail, and he's on his way to victory there.
Boyer's team played a little pit strategy to try and get track position. It worked until that point. Denny Hamlin goes by and scores the win. Very emotional in victory lane just days after losing his grandmother. Hamlin is the winner at Pocono. So look at some of the finishing results. Montoya came back to finish 2nd. That strategy played out nicely for him. Same for Sam Hornish Jr.
Yeah, big for Sam Hornish. I'm really proud of him, and that was one of his best performances of the year. I believe the guy's here right now. This is a good run, one of the best for Hornish.
Yeah, Montoya, we got to give Brian Patty a huge pat on the back. These guys bounced back from last week, almost potentially winning a race, to finishing 2nd. Outstanding 2 weeks for these guys.
And look at the lower right there. Tony Stewart, 10th. Jimmy Johnson, 13th. Wow. And Kyle Busch came back for 16th.
And Mark Martin, he's the old guy of the bunch, but still yet, with a 2nd place finish at Indianapolis, he comes back with another good finish. Hey, he's going to make that chase list.
So Denny Hamlin's race, let's talk about it for just a minute. We'll hear from Denny in just a few minutes on the program from Victory Lane at Pocono, but let's talk about his race there. At one point, he was shuffled back by pit strategy twice, and on that last pit stop where we saw Montoya and Hornish end up with the lead, Hamlin got shuffled all the way back to 10th with 30 to go. He had 4 tires. Some of the guys in front of him had 2 or just took fuel only on the last stop. And I guess Denny got enough cautions to make it work.
Yeah, absolutely, Alan. Those tires were everything in a word for him. It really worked out good. Those 4 tires compared to everybody else's 2 and no tires. But one thing was crystal clear throughout this race. So Denny Hamlin did have the fastest car. He was the guy they were going to have to beat.
Mike Ford, he made a tremendous call. It's great to experiment throughout the race. Put 2 tires, 4 tires, adjust the car, but Mike Ford made a great call, put 4 tires on the car, and at the end of the race, that's what carried him to victory.
I mean, let's face it, guys. You know, at the top of this sport, it's separated by tenths, and Denny Hamlin is a tremendous young race car driver, but he hadn't been to victory lane over 50 races, and we expect to see him in victory lane. He needed that little bit of an extra push, and the emotions that went into his week in losing a family member pushed him harder today to drive that race car harder. We heard him talk about overdriving it at times. Sometimes you need that little extra push to get the victory lane just because of the parity.
Let's talk about a couple things here. First of all, Rusty, you mentioned top of the show, the first half of the race wasn't all that excited. Clean air was big. When Jimmy Johnson was out front early, when Denny Hamlin got by him and went out front, when anybody could stay with the leader, kind of like we saw at Indianapolis, clean air was a huge thing at Pocono. But then late in the race, when the strategy kind of shuffled up the running order, we saw those tires come to mean something, and we saw people making some passes.
That's a good point. And one place I did see a lot of passing going on, Alan, was across the very last turn, turn 3. And I really believe the reason we saw that is because of the double file restarts. And another reason, they've got that fresh pavement about 1 lane up off of turn 3, and there was cars up high and cars down low, and it put them side by side, and that created some good racing.
I was just interested to see that in the last run of the race, maybe the clean air didn't mean as much as it had earlier, because the fastest car, when he had clean air, was able to check out. But when the fastest car was back in the pack, he still, with the tire strategy and everything, was able to make his way forward.
Yeah, but when you have those double file restarts, it's a situation where everybody's side by side, they get really aggressive. Like Denny said, you know, you get a chance to get up there, and you can see a guy that's really going to crowd the other guy and make him loose, and it gives him a chance to really get aggressive and, you know, pass those guys.
Brad O'Brew hit the nail on the head right there. I mean, I was thinking this earlier, that what's going on? After you said that, Alan, I was thinking, what's going on? These cats are just getting all jacked jacked up.
Yeah.
I mean, they're getting fired up. You could see in their eyes that, man, we're running out of time, and we got that double file restart, and we're side by side. Let's hammer down. Let's get out of Dodge, and that's what they did.
Well, I know this is kind of like watching an NBA game, Brad. Those last few minutes.
Man, I'll tell you what, they were running 4 and 5 wide. I tell you, it was a free-for-all, and it was exciting to watch. And for me, it's encouraging after coming off of Indy, where we saw cars just line up, and we talked about aero tight.
Yeah.
They couldn't get by one another. Well, here we saw cars, those last 10, 15, 20 laps, that could get runs with good tires, get a run on a guy, pass a guy, get side by side, and make some exciting racing. Like I say, 3, 4, and 5 wide at times.
All right, we've got a lot to cover, a lot of ground to cover on our combined NASCAR Now post-race show and Monday roundtable, including a visit with the winner, Denny Hamlin, who will join us shortly from Pocono's Victory Lane. We'll also hear from his team owner, J.D. Gibbs, in a couple of moments.
NASCAR Now, presented by the Home Depot. Visit HomeDepot.com. More saving, more doing. That's the power of the Home Depot. And in part by Nationwide Insurance, official auto insurance partner of NASCAR.
And the winner of today's race joins us now from Pocono's Victory Lane. Denny Hamlin, congratulations. I know it's a very emotional win for you, and I want to come back to that in a minute. First, I want to ask you about the race. Twice you got shuffled back by strategy. That last time on the last pit stop, did you think it was over then, or did you think you still had a shot?
Well, I don't know. We're 14th with about 30 to go. I was optimistic, but I was also realistic in thinking, you know, our car wasn't good the run before. We were going backwards. We fell back to about 8th, and our car just didn't like the 2 tires, and I didn't know how it was going to react with 4 tires back on it, and it just took off again once again. It just, I think we just had a bad set of tires and the run before, and you know, I knew after the first restart, we picked off about 3 in the first lap, and I said, man, if we just keep getting 1 or 2 more cautions, get a couple each time, I think we were going to be in good shape. And I said with about 15 to go when we were 6, I said we're going to win.
Yeah, we heard that on your team radio, and I thought that was pretty neat. That last restart, you went from 6th to 2nd. What was that like?
The C's parted. I think the 9 got loose under the 42 and got into him, and you know, I saw it coming, so I was able to check up before that happened and go in between them. But you know, we had 4 tires where our tires were a little bit better than those guys, and you know, at times I was just driving over my head. I had so many emotions, and the race was halfway on my mind, and you know, with the family stuff that's going on. You know, I was just, at times I was driving over my head. I got into the 00 in the turn 2, then I got into him again off 4, and you know, I tried to push him, hoping he'd straighten up, and I kept foot in it and spun him out and ended up hurting his chase chances. But you know, I hate that. You know, I know those guys work so hard. Michael really works hard to get those guys in the chase, and you know, I got to make up to him somehow.
Let's talk about the emotions of the day, Denny. You obviously were very emotional in Victory Lane, obviously still are now. An important win for you, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's been a tough week, and you know, my grandma was my biggest fan. Even though she couldn't see very well, she was always right up against the TV, you know, watching, you know, always rooting me on. She always wore number 11 socks every day, and you know, she basically died in my mom's arms. So I mean, my mom got to at least be there. She was 91 years old, and she lived a great life. But you know, I knew she was watching after me, and I asked her for help a lot of times during the race today, and she helped us.
Well, you got her a trophy today, you got your family a trophy today, and you got yourself a trophy. Congratulations. Led the most laps, won the race, but made a spectacular rally to do it, and we thank you for your time.
Thanks. I appreciate being here.
A really interesting day for Denny Hamlin, and I had two thoughts there, and I'll express them and let you guys react. But one, the racing business is relentless. Doesn't matter what's going on in your life. When you're a Sprint Cup driver, when it's time for the green flag to wave, you got to go. And second thought is, he talked about concentration, Rusty. You know how hard you have to concentrate to be a driver, especially at those speeds. And when there's something on your mind like that, how big a wrestle must that be?
It's a really big job to do what he did today, because we heard his interview where he said, hey, I'm thinking about my grandma half the time, and I'm driving half the time. And we always talk, you know, down in the studio or at the races, wherever we're at, wherever we're all stationed, that how you have to be 100% focused to get the job done.
Yeah.
And for him to drive that fast and win this race, using half of his mind, half of it thinking of his mother, and and his grandmother in Victory Lane. It was amazing. And for him to be in Victory Lane and the emotion he had, he couldn't even hardly thank anybody. He was just overwhelmed with emotion. He was just spent. He was tired. It's time for him to go home and go to bed and wake up tomorrow morning and see just what happened. Because I don't really think he knows what happened just now.
Yeah.
I don't think he can remember this win yet.
Yeah, and you know, I've always been really impressed with Denny Hamlin. I mean, I've watched this young man, especially the past 3 years. I've watched him work on his body. He's lost 25, 30 pounds. I've seen his intense focus, and I think he's one of the great up-and-coming superstars of this sport. This team had struggled to be where I thought it should be in Victory Lane this season. They're right in the middle of the chase points, but this is a winning combination. And this week, it's been a tough week for Denny Hamlin, but he utilized that positive energy to get himself into Victory Lane. Now, the question is, can he continue to build upon this? Because this is a championship caliber team.
You know, you couldn't be in any better place than Denny Hamlin's situation right now, being at Joe Gibbs Racing, because that is one of the most family-oriented teams in racing. And to have J.D. Gibbs and Mike Ford and those guys surround Denny, give him the confidence to come in and win the race today, that says a lot for Joe Gibbs Racing.
Let's talk about what the win might do for the team. We've heard Denny Hamlin express that they weren't getting the wins and the results that they expected to. I mean, this was his first win of the season, and they did it today. They got to Victory Lane today. What's that do for Denny? What's that do for the team?
I'll give you, for instance, Alan, it's kind of a personal story, but in 1979, we went to Old Texas Motor Speedway and tore up every motor we had on the truck, blew up. They called me Saturday night and said my grandmother passed away.
Oh,
that was June the 2nd, 1979. Well, we go out there in 1980. We sat on the pole, lead the most laps, win the race. And Benny Parsons said, hey, Brewer, let's go to Vegas. And I said, no, I got to go home. My wife's getting ready to have a child. 1 year later to the day, my son Scott was born. So, you know, it's a fabulous story as far as where I'm at. But still, yet, you give those guys momentum, and this is a momentum-changing deal. And look for Denny Hamlin to be very, very tough the rest of the season.
And you can really tell that Dunny was really getting bugged, though.
Yeah.
I could see it in his voice. He was really getting tired of not winning. That's 50 race he hasn't won. And I mean, I watched a show on television the other day. I think it was Cribs or something. And he did Denny's house. And he had stuff taped all over the house, sayings about, you can do it, you're the man, stuff like that type of stuff, you know. And he was really trying to emotionally pump himself up because he was mad that he wasn't winning.
Yeah.
You know, we talk about Kyle Busch all the time and his inability to accept not being successful. Well, Denny Hamlin's cut out of that same mold. He gets very, very agitated, and he'll speak out. And I like that about him. I think he should wear his emotions on his sleeves. And he has been pretty vocal about saying, we've got to get some things right. And we've heard him in the past say that. Well, I think they finally starting to get some things right, and these cats better watch out.
You're being awful nice after you just wrecked both your cars.
He didn't wreck the race car, but you know what? But you know what?
What?
I got no problem with it because he went on to win the race.
Yep.
And that means he was being aggressive in the right manner. He was trying to get to Victory Lane. If he just wrecked the race cars and tore up my race car and was just another guy in the back of the field, I'd have a problem with that. He won the race. He deserved to win the race because he was the most aggressive. He was the fastest, and we'll just fix our race car and show up at the next one.
Well said.
Here's the one thing I was struck by Rusty's comments a minute ago. How old are you?
Me?
Yeah.
52.
You were watching Cribs?
Yeah, we were watching Cribs.
You're a little out of
I wasn't going there.
I'm watching Pimp My Ride, too. You know?
Oh, yeah.
Is that on ESPN? I don't know.
You're a little out of the demographic for that. Coming up on the NASCAR Now Monday Roundtable / post-race show.
Cribs.
How this wreck involving one of Brad's cars altered the bubble picture in the race to the chase.
That's going to leave a mark.
Welcome back to NASCAR Now, presented by the Home Depot.
So here's what the bubble picture, if you will, looked like in the race to the chase entering Pocono. Those are plus 13th for the guys 8th through 12th spots, and then minus 12th for the guys outside the top 12 cutoff. And again, 6 races to the chase starting Pocono. How did some of those guys fare today? Well, some better than others. Casey Kane led a bunch. He looked like he might have had a potential winning car. A little pit strategy late also helped him out. And Kane, in that last restart, got shuffled around some. Wound up taking home 5th place money and had a pretty good day in points. He is in 7th spot. How about Mark Martin?
Mark Martin came into this race, and the big thing for Mark is trying to keep momentum, try to get good finishes, continue to get the good top 10 solid finishes throughout the rest of the season to get himself into that chase, and he did that today. He had a good solid race car, not a great one, but he ended up getting himself a really good finish, a top 10 finish.
Juan Pablo Montoya, Rusty.
And Montoya, you know, he came into this race really running good. He was 10th in the points, came out of it 8th in the points. But I always wondered, was the big run at Indianapolis a fluke? No, it wasn't. He finished 2nd here. He's strong.
Nice strategy call by Brian Patty late in the race as well. Greg Biffle wound up 15th on the day.
You can't take anything away from Greg Biffle because he's coming to win the race. You know, he knows he's got his back up to the wall, and he's going to come out with all guns blazing.
Matt Kenseth started the day on the bubble where championship points were concerned and came home with an 11th place finish.
Tell you what, Matt Kenseth, as usual, has been very quiet, just kind of doing his yeoman's-like work. Here he is. He's just getting a good, decent, another solid run, another good weekend for that DeWalt Ford. We better keep an eye on Matt Kenseth. He's a former champion, and he can do it again.
The one who got hurt the most today was David Rudeman.
Oh, absolutely. Rudeman came into this 13th in the points and came out 16th. Had a strong car throughout the day, run up front a lot, and look at that right there. That ruined his day. Dropped on 3 positions in the points.
Finished 29th. Now, Kyle Busch kind of didn't have the best of cars, and then he got up into the wall late in the race, and I thought, okay, Kyle's got some troubles, but he came back to finish decent.
Thought Kyle was going to be done. I mean, he really was struggling. We've seen him struggle at these racetracks, especially the big flat racetracks, and we just thought this was going to be another tough weekend for Kyle, but I'll be darned if he didn't bounce back and have a good 16th place finish.
And the Vic helped himself a lot on the day.
Hey, Brian Vickers, he's up against that wall too, Alan. And all he's got to do, he's got fast race cars. And like he said the other day in the garage area, I have to finish races. I've got speed. I just have to finish them.
And came up with a good, solid 6th place run. Clint Boyer.
Clint Boyer, that's the most impressive run that Richard Childress' guys have had in quite some time. And that guy, he knows he has to finish. The other day he said top 10s. He's got to finish in the top 5, and he knows it.
Let's hear from a couple guys, including Juan Pablo.
In our head, and I told him, you know, I think we got a car that can win the race. I think the bigger thing was where the 11 was going to be. I thought I had a car fast enough to hold 11, and I just got, you know, I got hit in the last restart, and he passed me. But I don't know. It's ifs and buts don't count. You know, my goal this year is making the chase. That's the bigger picture. You know, a year ago when we sat down with Brian, our goal was making the chase this year, and we did. You know, so far.
We had a decent car. It was fast in practice, and we just lost way too much track position on pit road all day long, and kept battling back. And Shane, with his call, bailed us out. I was proud of his, his call there, and we stuck it out, and things worked our way. And haven't really been going our way exactly all year long, so it feels good to have something swing your way a little bit. And you know, we're not out of this thing. We've got to keep plugging away. I think we're 115 out, and there's still a lot of racing left. So I feel like. If we get our act together, we can still fight.
So after the Pocono race, a look at the bubble standings. Juan Pablo Montoya moves up to 8th position, gains 69 points on the bubble. Ryan Newman lost 20 points to the bubble. Mark Martin gained 50 points on the bubble. And Matt Kenseth went from 68 up to 102 to the good. You see Greg Biffle, now the bubble boy, at 101 points. Kyle Busch, 13th now, that's up a spot. And Clint Boyer, 15th in points. After the Pocono race, he went from 151 away from the chase to now 115 points out of the chase. Talk about a couple of strategy things where Montoya and Boyer were concerned. Montoya, lap 165. His team has the first pit stall on pit road, so coming off turn 3, stall number 1. So Brian Patty's up there on the pit box at that point in turn 3, and he and a couple other crew chiefs, like Travis Geisler for Sam Hornish Jr., see something come off one of the cars. And they call their driver to pit road, and they get there before the pit road is closed. The caution comes out. They're able to make their pit stop penalty-free. They come back out, and all of a sudden, Sam and Montoya are 3 of 4 cars that are leading the race instead of being back 20-something.
Yeah. Is that lucky? I mean, I'm going to call that lucky.
Well, is it lucky or is it good?
It's
paying
good.
attention.
It's good
paying
what
attention
happened.
to what's going on in front of you.
No, it's good what happened. I just, going in that race, though, I said that pit stall. I hate that pit stall. I do not like being the first guy in. I like being at that other end, or at least from the start-finish line on down. But, man, today it worked out great for him because of that reason right there.
That number 1 pit stall is the worst one in the world, because if you're leading the race, you come in, you got 42 guys running behind all your guys right there on pit road. And I used to be one of those guys on the right side of the car. I'm like you. I hate that pit stall.
Hey, it was a brilliant observation by Brian Patty, and quick on his feet to react and get Montoya down. Then he comes back out with Boyer and Truex, and those guys are up front. It was incredible thinking and reaction by Brian Patty.
And what about Clint Boyer's team, who had the opportunity there? They got damaged in a little run-in on the racetrack, so they had to pit to make repairs. So they took the opportunity to play a little strategy to get some track position back, wound up leading the race, darn near pulled the win off, and ended up with a third-place finish. I guess, you know, turning a bad circumstance into an opportunity is what I think of for them.
Yeah, but one thing I remember, though, Alan, yesterday in our countdown show, we had Boyer in our pit studio,
yep. And
he kept saying, I got a good car. I got a good car. Look, this wasn't a fluke. He finished third because he had a good car. Yeah, he skirted some problems, but he didn't have a junky car like he's had a lot this year. And RCR's turned that thing around.
The other thing he said was, top 10s aren't going to be good enough to get us in the chase. We got to have top fives. Remember that?
And that's the reason I went back a while ago. And you know, he said he had to have top 5 finishes to get back in because, like he said in an interview, top 10's not going to be good enough, and he knows he's got to put the hammer down right now.
And one other guy to very quickly touch on, Kyle Busch. He gained a spot in the standings, but he actually lost ground to 13th place in points.
Yeah, just had another tough day that could have been even worse after he got into the wall there, but they managed to get a good 16th place finish. I still believe in these next 5 races, Kyle Busch is capable of winning 2 of these races, in particular next week at Watkins Glen. He's very good on the road courses. So if he can get those 2 wins in, have some solid finishes, he's in. The guy who got killed today, though, was David Rudiman. Yeah. He got slammed, lost almost 60 points today. It's going to be tough for him to make that ground back up.
When we come back on the NASCAR Now Monday Roundtable, we'll go back to the track, hear from Doc, DJ, and Andy, and we'll hear from our pit reporters, too, their thoughts on the day. This was supposed to be their roundtable, after all. That's next on NASCAR Now.
Full Throttle is brought to you by Degree V12.
NASCAR drivers will tell you that all wins are emotional. But when you haven't won in over a year and you're mourning the loss of your grandmother, it is especially so for one Denny Hamlin. Somehow he found the strength to get to victory lane. And in order to get here, he had to hold off the hard charge of this driver, Juan Pablo Montoya. Remember, a week ago, it was a mistake on pit road that cost Montoya a chance to win at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But on a Monday in Pocono, this team was simply brilliant.
Yeah, this was a great call by Brian Patty, the crew chief, to bring Montoya in under green when their fuel window opened. There was 35 laps to go. They brought Montoya in, got 4 tires. The caution came out that very same lap.
Yeah, they said, now it's up to you, Juan. Get the job done on the racetrack. You can see on our final restart here, Montoya's in second place on the outside there. Gets a little tap right there from Casey Kane. Did a great job of hanging on to his car. He was able to follow Denny Hamlin up through there, but never able to get back to him in passing.
This kind of performance by Montoya and that team maybe could take some of the bitterness out of their mouth from what happened a week ago at Indy.
Yeah, that was a terrible loss for that team last week after leading so many laps at Indy and having the problem. This week, it was a great call, and this is the kind of race that you need to forget about those losses.
Yeah, forget about that and solidify yourself in that top 12. That's what they needed, was a good, solid top 5. These guys look like they're ready to battle for a championship.
The comeback story today belonged to current series champion Jimmie Johnson. What an effort by this whole team.
Yeah, they had a great car in the beginning of the race, but then the engine started missing. They couldn't quite figure out what the problem was. It took forever to find it. They changed the carburetor. You see them changing it here. They ended up changing the spark plugs, and that fixed the problem, but they found themselves 3 laps down. And after that, they had to go to work and got a few breaks.
Yeah, not only did they think that their day was getting better, but they get in this situation where an accident happens right in front of Jimmie Johnson. He goes to the bottom of the racetrack, able to avoid that trouble.
They made up 3 laps, folks. They spent much of the day back in 36th position, and Jimmie will be credited with a 13th place finish. And by the way, points leader Tony Stewart finished in the top 10 after having a struggle much of the day. So there's the margin, 197 points between Johnson and Stewart. There's the top 12. Montoya gaining 2 positions in the points up to 8 by finishing second here today. But it was Denny Hamlin's day at Pocono Raceway. Hamlin became the 12th different driver to win in 2009.
All right, Booth Boys, thanks. As we continue going full throttle, Sam Hornish Jr. finishing 4th, the best finish of his Sprint Cup Series career. Doc mentioned Tony Stewart. He finished 10th, his 9th consecutive top 10 finish, and we documented David Rudiman's day not ending well. He finished 29th, continuing a kind of a lousy run at Pocono he's had, with the exception of that last run in June. In 6 starts, an average 26th place finish for David Rudiman. Let's hear from some more of the folks who covered the race for us at the track. David Burns, what do you got?
Well, I couldn't help but be impressed by what the 11 car and the team of Denny Hamlin did today. Crew Chief Mike Ford told me that they were kind of out to lunch in the first practice of the weekend, but they got things settled in the Saturday practice and made some final adjustments that made this car the best today. They dialed the car out once during the race, only putting 2 right side tires on. They got it back, and Denny drove aggressively to the front of the pack to take the win today. Denny Hamlin did a fantastic job under very interesting circumstances.
Hi, I'm Shannon Spake. I covered Jimmy Johnson on Monday at Pocono. After a motor issue put the team 3 laps down, Chad Knaus and that team worked patiently on the 48 car, getting it back out onto the track. Jimmy Johnson was able to rally for a 13th place finish. His teammate Mark Martin called Jimmy Johnson Superman, and today they proved why they are a 3-time championship team.
All right, Dave, Shannon, thank you. Let's talk about Jimmy Johnson and his team and what they did. How many, let's show of hands here, 3 laps down, how many of you thought Jimmy Johnson would come back for a top 10 finish? I did. I thought he'd come back for a top 10 finish. He was 13th, it's pretty close, but I really thought they'd find a way to come back because that's what this team does.
Anytime you put those guys in a bad situation, you're going to find out exactly how tough they are, because Rick Hendricks's organization, they train themselves. If they had an issue with that engine, hey, they've been there, done that. They know what they're doing. They're going to correct the problem. You know, Chad might not tell you what the problem is, but when Petrie said that the last thing they changed was the spark plugs, believe it, that's what it was.
The thing that I found interesting was at one point they were flirting with that minimum speed that you have to maintain on the racetrack, and he almost got black flagged.
Yeah, he did, and it's just so interesting. Year after year after year after we watch this race team, whenever they get pushed into a corner, like Tim said, they respond so well, and that's what separates them. They've got great performance, they got great pieces and parts, but they always respond to the positive whenever they're pushed in a corner.
I can tell you guys one thing. I thought it was really entertaining to watch the crew. I mean, to sit there and watch them, it looked old school to me. I mean, ripping the carburetor off, pulling the spark plugs out, ripping the spark plug wires off, jamming. They went out there without the air cleaner on, flew around, came back in, put the old motor back together, and flew through the field and gets that great finish. I mean, it was just fun to watch that type of stuff to me.
Yeah. 13th place. Go ahead.
The key word was, like Shannon said, patiently worked on the race car.
Yep.
That saved them.
13th place for Jimmy Johnson from 3 laps down. Another impressive weekend from what was bound to be a bad day. They pulled another one out. When we come back on the NASCAR Now Monday Roundtable, we will go back to Pocono, talk with the owner of the winning car, J.D. Gibbs. That's next.
You're watching NASCAR Now, presented by the Home Depot.
Back to the racing in a minute. First couple of huge American League East matchups this week on ESPN's Major League Baseball. Wednesday Night Baseball presented by Smirnoff Ice. The Red Sox and the Rays from Tampa. That's ESPN at 7 Eastern. Then Sunday Night Baseball presented by Taco Bell. The Red Sox and the Yankees. The Red Sox have won all of this season's meetings between the two so far. This time it's in New York. That's 8 Eastern Sunday night on ESPN. Let's take a minute and talk with the owner of today's winning car, joining us from the Victory Lane area at Pocono Raceway, J.D. Gibbs. J.D., congratulations. What were you thinking when you saw your car take the checkered flag?
That was a big deal for us on a number of levels. Obviously for Denny, just losing his grandmother, who was his #1 fan from years ago, and then also just for this team, all they've been through and the near misses, that was a big deal for Joe Gibbs Racing.
You know, for the first part of the race, you looked like you had a car that was pretty well unbeatable. Then some of the strategy twists and turns and the way that the plot of the day unfolded, you looked like you were in a pretty deep hole for a while. Any point in the day at which you thought, well, that one got away from us?
Yeah, no, it was a while there when you kind of get back. That clean air means so much for us here, especially at this track. You kind of get back to work your way up. It's a tall task. So it was just to watch those guys get that number 11 FedEx Toyota back up there. That was yeoman's work. So I really hats off to the guys in that team and Mike Ford and the way they kept their calm, and Denny, and just kind of plugged away.
So the late restart when Denny went from like 6th to 2nd in turn 1, were you wincing, holding your breath?
Yeah, you know, nowadays, I hold my breath for 200 laps because as an owner, you don't know what's going to happen. So to watch that was just kind of a testament to Denny's skill and what those guys put under him, kind of coming back a little bit from adversity there. That was we needed that for this race team and for Joe Gibbs Racing. So that was exciting.
Let me touch on a couple things. Denny obviously helped himself a lot where solidifying a place in the chase is concerned. Kyle had some troubles late in the race where he got squeezed into the wall, then came back and tried to pick up some spots late in the end. Thoughts post-mortem on the day for the 18 team?
Yeah, I think Kyle, they struggled at the get-go. Midway through, they were kind of, sinking back a little bit, 18th, 19th, 20th, and then they kind of made a little rally there, got in the top 10, 8th, 9th, and then kind of got in the wall. And that's, that's one of those things that's just going to happen. And so I think for us, when you look at the chase, you look at the 18 car, you have to finish. If we finish where we're capable of running, it won't be an issue. But you got to get those finishes. So to be able to come back a little bit, that was encouraging somewhat.
And Joey Logano, we saw him pitting once just as the field was taking the green for a restart. And thought on that team's day?
Yeah, that was, we just got caught up in someone else's mess there. And I think Joey, to watch him from last time, this is really the first track he's been able to come back to and run a second time. And he just did a great job. Every time he goes back, it gets better and better. Had a legitimate, top 15 car and could have even had a run for a top 10. Just got caught up, and then they came back and made something out of it. But it was kind of discouraging. But overall, it was encouraging to kind of watch him and the momentum he's making in this sport.
I want to go back to your winning team for a minute. There were some times in recent weeks where Denny stumbled and had some hard luck and said some things along the lines of, we need to run better, we need to perform better. And this team kind of was looking inward to find something to pick themselves up. How important was this win to this team?
It was a big deal for this team, not just the FedEx team, but for all of JGR. Because the reality of it is, we've taken ourselves out of a few races there with a few mechanical issues. But I think we've been second in Martinsville. He's been close before. To seal the deal, when you have a really good car, if you do that week in, week out, you'll be fine. But it's not easy to do. And right now, we got to get some momentum back. And this was a big start for everyone with this 11 team.
Day late, but it felt just as good, I'm sure. Congratulations, JD, for your team's effort today and getting the win.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
When we come back, another Joe Gibbs racing car, Kyle Busch, was the winner last year at Watkins Glen. We'll talk about next Sunday's race in a minute.
How special would this be for Marcus Ambrose? All the way from Tasmania, goes to victory lane for the first time in his career.
I can't believe it, man.
And there's trouble here coming off turn number 11. A number of cars have gotten together.
We have got cars everywhere. Carnage down here at the end of pit road.
The year of Kyle Busch is set to continue here this afternoon in Watkins Glen. He'll become the first driver since 2003 to sweep both Sprint Cup road races in a season, and he wins here today at Watkins Glen International.
So looking ahead to the next race, which is Sunday on the road course at Watkins Glen, Tony Stewart has the best average finish at the Glen among active Sprint Cup drivers. The two-time series champ has 4 wins and 8 top 10s in 10 starts. You got that? 4 wins and 8 top 10s in 10 starts.
That's stout.
We'll put Tony Stewart on the favorites list for Sunday at Watkins Glen. Rusty, you're a former winner there before. What's it take for a driver to get around Watkins Glen?
You can't tear up equipment, number one, and you got to stay on the course.
Yeah.
People ask me all the time, how do you get around a road course and what's the key to success? I tell them, number one, do not get off the course. If you get in those sand traps, they got to come pull you out and your day is over. You just can't have that happen. The other thing is this big problem we're having with this wheel hopping, getting down into turn 1. Brewer's going to talk about that in a minute, but we can't have that problem. That's going to kill us.
With the car you've got right now, with no more downforce than you have, guys get to racing really hard. You're going downhill. You're racing the guy behind you. The next thing you know, you jump on the brakes. You lock the rear wheels up. What do you do then? If you back off the brake pedal, you're going to wreck. If you don't get on the brakes real hard, you're still going to wreck. So good luck with that.
So basically, you're going to wreck. The last several, actually, but particularly the last few road course events for the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series, they've been like bare-knuckle barroom brawls when it gets down to the late laps.
It's unbelievable. I mean, these guys just go for it, it seems like, in those, like I said, those last few laps, and they just move people literally out of the way. It's a very physical race. Even all day long, as you watch guys try to pine for position, they're moving people around. It's a tough race. It's a fun race to watch as the day goes on.
Yeah, but remember when we were there last year, you won the race,
Yes,
right?
sir, that's
and
right.
in an interview, Marcus Ambrose said Sunday. It's good to have Brad because when the brawl breaks out, Brad's going to be your #1 fan.
He's going to be part of it, huh? You don't want to mess with a 7-footer. But this racetrack and the new double file shootout style restarts have been a topic of discussion for several people for a little while now. Inside, outside, the drivers I talk to say, I want to be on the inside going into turn 1 at Watkins Glen on a restart because that guy on the outside of me might end up over in Horseheads by the time we're done.
Yeah, and I think one of the key things right you just said, Alan, you know, inside or outside, if I'm at Watkins Glen, I'm going to want the right side of the track, the inside lane, closest to the entry of turn 1. But I do know that I need to get a good restart. If I get through the gears pretty good and I get about a half a car length jump on that guy getting down into turn 1, I feel pretty good. I don't feel good if I get in there side by side with the guy.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Marcos Ambrose says, just like Rusty said, he said the most important corner on this entire racetrack is turn 1. You have to get through turn 1 clean, not wheel hop your race car, not get the car up on the curb. You got to get through there smooth, and then it's on.
That is Watkins Glen this coming weekend, doubleheader. We've got the Nationwide Series race Saturday. We've got the Sprint Cup Series race on Sunday. And when we come back, speaking of the Nationwide Series, we're going to touch back on the other of this weekend's NASCAR National races, the Nationwide race at Iowa and the truck race in Nashville.
NASCAR Now, presented by the Home Depot. Visit HomeDepot.com. More saving, more doing. That's the power of the Home Depot.
Think those were Home Depot tools they were using to fix that caution light? Lug notes now. 81-year-old Herschel McGriff finished 19th in the Camping World West event at Utah. I want to be racing when I'm 81. Go Herschel.
We got a chance.
Steve Park, congratulations. Won the NASCAR East Series race at Adirondack Speedway in upstate New York. His first Camping World Series win since 1996. And remember, Jimmy Johnson was supposed to be honored at the White House and a bunch of past champions like Rusty. That was supposed to be today. They had to cancel on the president. That's been rescheduled for Wednesday, August 19th. Here we go, NASCAR Nationwide Series, Saturday at the Iowa Speedway. Kyle Busch looking for his 9th straight finish in the top 2. That would be an all-time record. What a crowd at Iowa.
Awesome, man. I mean, come on. We're talking a 7/8 mile racetrack. Did you see that? There was standing room only. We need to learn something from this.
Little race for the lead. Brad Keselowski by Kyle Busch. Then a caution's going to come out a little bit later. Whoops. Look out.
Ooh, I thought this was going to cost me. He kept spinning and spinning and spinning. Didn't hit nothing. I went, good job, man.
Brendan Gaughan driving one of Rusty Wallace's race cars. So, 42 laps to go. More trouble. This one, another Rusty Wallace race car, isn't it? Somewhere?
No. I'm sorry, wrong. He got into a little Dillon there. Austin Dillon.
Yeah, thank you. Pit stops, strategy. Keselowski says, I'll stay out on the racetrack,
I thought this was going to kill him. I really did, because he didn't put tires on. I thought tires were going to overhaul him, and the tires stayed good.
Yeah, but you got 3 grooves to race on out there. 3 side by side all night long. Hey, it's a great racetrack. Who designed that anyway?
Kyle Busch went by Keselowski on his 2 fresh tires for the lead. Then there's, see, I got ahead of myself. I hate it when I do that.
So I've got Justin Allgaier, Eric Darnell, and Stephen Wallace all get together. They're racing really hard.
And all 3 having a good race. So after the restart with 9 laps to go, the winning pass was made. Brad Keselowski.
Yeah, did a great job. He dove right under Kyle Busch, who was as strong as usual at a nationwide event. But old Brad put the slide job on him and took home the checkered flag.
Keselowski with his 2nd Nationwide Series race win of 2009. Congratulations to him. Kyle Busch with his runner-up finish, tying Jack Ingram's 26-year-old record in the Nationwide Series for consecutive top 2 finishes at 9. The series heads to Watkins Glen now, where, yes, Kyle Busch finished 2nd 1 year ago. Another record run here, the Nationwide Series, the Camping World Truck Series at Nashville. Ron Hornaday going for another consecutive win. 35-minute rain delay. Hornaday passing Timothy Peters and Stacy Compton for his first lead of the day at lap 34. Now we move ahead toward the finish. 2 laps to go. Terry Cook with a little spin cycle.
Terry gets her sideways there coming off the corner, and unfortunately backs it in the fence here, and that pretty much ended his day.
So they go for a green-white checker finish, and Ron Hornaday gets away.
Hey, he's a restart king. He's taught a lot of guys in the garage area how to do that, and he just gave them a prime example of the first rate how to win the race.
Checkered flag for driver 33. Ron Hornaday wins again, leading the championship there by 216 points. Hornaday joining Richard Petty and Bobby Allison as the only drivers to win 5 consecutive NASCAR National Touring Series races. By the way, the all-time record is 10 straight wins, set by Petty in 1967. Hornaday going for 6 in a row at Bristol Motor Speedway on August 19th. That hour went by quickly. Final thoughts?
I liked the last 30 laps of Pocono. I thought it was pretty good race in the last 30. I didn't like the beginning of it. It was kind of follow the leader, but later on, it looked really good. But look, I've got to talk about the Iowa race fans again. That race was unbelievable. We're talking 60,000 fans, standing room only. I know I've been pumping up this track forever and ever and ever. Yeah, I do have something to do with it. But, man, I was just blown away. 3-wide racing, sold out. Brad, it was unbelievable,
yeah,
man.
7/8 mile racetrack, standing room only. We got to learn something from this. Last 50 laps of today's race was outstanding, fun to watch. I'm so glad to see that this car, we're going to see some passing as we go forward.
I'm just glad to see good racing. You know, side by side, make the COT car better, and I think there's some, room down the road to do that. But still, yet, what I think, the nationwide cars at Iowa, that was a great race this weekend, Rusty.
Looked like a great turnout at Pocono. The fans came back and watched the race once again. Great job by the fans to come back and support the race. Great job by the track officials. There was so much water dumped on that speedway. They worked all night along with NASCAR officials to get that place raceable on Monday. So tip of the cap to the Mattioli family and their staff at Pocono, as well as the NASCAR officials, for making it happen. So better late than never for Denny Hamlin as he takes the checkered flag on a Monday afternoon race at Pocono. It's on to Watkins Glen next weekend for the Nationwide and Sprint Cup Series teams. And, of course, NASCAR now with all the racing news throughout the week. Thanks for watching.